Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Andrew, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. This is a one-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown, PA. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Welcome. Welcome. Scott, welcome. Welcome, Steve. Yes, Clark. Kay, welcome. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Chris.
Chris, I'm an alcoholic. March 12th in the Woodward Community Park. We're having a meeting and a barbecue afterwards. That's there every Sunday, 12 noon, 1733 Township Green, Woodward Park. Come on out.
Thank you. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those that can't afford them can put donations in a jar on the back table marked Big Book and CD donations. If you would like a CD of any speaker, past or present, see me or any home group member before or after the meeting. They're available free of charge. And now I would like to welcome Sherry to read the preamble.
Hi, I'm Sherry. I'm an alcoholic. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I have asked Nick to come up and read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery.
My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic. The 12 Steps of Recovery. 1, we admitted we are powerless over alcohol. Their lives have become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, We try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. And I'll turn the meeting back over to Andrew.
And for the seventh tradition, every AA group ought to be self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. There's absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And at this point, I'd like to introduce this evening's speaker. She is a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, and she comes all the way from Baltimore, Maryland. Please welcome Cleo.
Hi guys, I'm Cleo Devlin. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you all for spending this time with me tonight, and thanks for asking me to come speak to all of you guys. It's an honor to be asked to speak at any meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that is not the way I always felt. I didn't get here and want to be here. This was not my goal in life to end up in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I truly feel as though it's an honor to actually be able to stand at the front of the room and have something to offer in the way of experience of a solution here. And that's what I'm going to talk to you guys about tonight. I'm here from Baltimore, Maryland. My home group is the Firing Line. We meet on Tuesday nights in Baltimore, Hamden, the Village Church. We would love to have any of you, if you're ever in Baltimore on a Tuesday night. We're a big book-based meeting. We have a leader come in and go from the beginning of the doctor's opinion through the end of Dr. Bob's nightmare and come in and read line by line and break down his or her experience with what he or she reads as we go through. And getting into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is what has changed my life and allowed me to stay sober and allowed me to get free. And so I love that. I love our meeting. I love our home group. I actually feel at home in our home group. I miss it when we're out of town. And it's just a wonderful thing to be a part of. And it's so funny because I'm from Northern California. I got sober in Los Angeles. I lived in Los Angeles for about 6 years. And then my husband, who was my fiance at the time, this was about 2 years ago, we were planning to move to Hawaii. That was our plan. We like to surf, and we had been there a couple of times. We were in love with it, and that was our plan. And we were looking at moving there. We had taken our dog. It's very hard to move a dog to Hawaii. I will let any of you know if you're ever considering moving to Hawaii. But we had taken our dog to the vet to start all of her vaccinations, which were a lot of money, and you have to so we were going through this whole process. We were very serious about it, and in the middle of all of this, we got moved to Baltimore through my husband's amends process, which I probably will get into later, but, I say that now, and maybe we'll get there, and maybe we'll not. We won't. We'll see where we go. But, it was not our plan to move to Baltimore. Literally, I think 2 weeks before we ended up getting moved by the FBI showing up at his parents' door, I think he said something along the lines of, "I never in my life will live in Baltimore." And 2 weeks later, that's where he has been living since. And we were away visiting some friends up in Martha's Vineyard last weekend, and I I was like really looking forward to getting home. We'd missed one home group. I wanted to be back at our home group, and like I said to it, I was like, I cannot believe I am so happy that we live in Baltimore. You know, it's like, it's nothing compared to living in Northern California and Los Angeles. Like, it's not pretty like that. There's not nice stuff going on like that. Like, even the fast food is worse in Baltimore. Like, and I swear, like, Chipotle is not good in Baltimore. And so it's none of that, but like what has happened as a result of letting God into our lives and allowing ourselves to get moved. Because there wasn't no choice in the matter. We could have decided, no, we're still going to live in Los Angeles. You know, it just became clear that Baltimore was the place to be. And allowing that clarity to actually lead and not try to exert our will over it. What has happened is this fellowship has grown up around us. We, with a couple other people, began a home group that I feel more a part of and more at home than any other group I've ever been a part of. There is a sore lack of strong female sponsorship in the area. It's like, and there's tons of strong sobriety in Los Angeles. So like, it was what, you know, I could help some people there, but there wasn't a dire need for it in the same way that there is in Baltimore. I have a usefulness in Baltimore that is way beyond anything I had in Los Angeles. I have, you know, an AA family around me that I never had. And I am so grateful that I didn't miss out on this experience because I was, was continuing to try to live on my will like I did for so long before I got here. So like, how did I get to that? You know, because obviously I didn't just walk in the door, and for me it was not like, oh, of course, turn my will and life over to God, and God's going to do a much better job than me. That's not what happened. When I first got here, I didn't even like to say the word God, and, you know, I bristled with antagonism when anybody else did. So my sobriety date is May 10th of 2016, so I have 5 years sober. But I got to Alcoholics Anonymous in February of 2013, and I never left. I have been in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous since then. I have been wanting to be sober since then. I have been trying to be sober since then. But the wanting to and the trying to, without a willingness to seek God, and without a willingness to work the 12 steps, resulted in, you know, me getting 5 months sober, a year sober, a year and a half sober, feeling like I wanted to rip my own skin off, and being forced by the way that I feel sober without a solution to drink again, against my own will. And it took that happening over and over again for over 3 years for me to be cracked open and come to actually understand, have my mind open enough to be able to hear what the people around here were actually saying when they were talking about what the illness of alcoholism actually is. Because I got here, and before I even got here, I'm like one of those weird anomalies that, like, even though I think my grandfather went to some AA meetings, and I know that my best friend who I ran with, she went to some AA meetings. I really didn't consciously know that Alcoholics Anonymous existed. I kind of lived under a rock in terms of watching movies and stuff, so I didn't really know that AA existed before I got here. I think the thing that I thought it was the same thing that had happened when I got a DUI. I thought it was classes. That was all that I thought people were talking about when they went to meetings. And so when I first got here, I got here because a rehab brought me here. And I had no problem raising my hand and saying, I'm Cleo, I'm an alcoholic. The problem was I didn't know what that meant. You know, when I raised my hand and said that, I thought that what I was saying was I have a problem with alcohol, and so it seemed to me that if I had a problem with alcohol, the answer was sobriety, and if I could just put the alcohol down, my life was going to get better. And that's not what happened. You know, and it took years of that not happening for me to really come to experientially understand what we're talking about here, what we're talking about in the first step, what we're talking about with the illness of alcoholism. Because I got here, and for those first 3 years, all I understood was the first half of the first step. You know, the first half of the first half of the first step at that, you know, because the first step says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. And then there's this dash, so separate thought, that our lives have become unmanageable. And as I have been shown it, as I've come to experience it, as I see it now, there's 3 pieces to that. I'm powerless over alcohol once I put alcohol in my system because I have a body that reacts abnormally, that I have this allergy to alcohol, that I drink, and what happens is I have an uncontrollable need for more alcohol. I have this craving for more alcohol. I also have this mind that renders me powerless over alcohol when I have no alcohol in my system at all. Because I have a mind that tells me this time it's going to be different. This time you're going to be able to control and enjoy it. You know, mine never tells me that tonight you're going to be able to drink like a lady, or tonight you're going to be able to have 2 drinks. Because that's never been appealing to me. But my mind does tell me tonight you can get completely blacked out, and then tomorrow you can go back to being sober. You know, that's what my obsession looks like. And what drives that, this part after the dash, this unmanageability piece, which I thought what we were talking about was that I render my life unmanageable because of what happens when I'm drinking. I thought we were talking about the car crashes and the DUIs and the spending nights in jail here and there and the relationships blowing up and the toxic abuse. Like, I thought it was all of that stuff. And what I've been shown here, what I've come to experience is no, it's the internal condition. It's that I'm not okay. I can't manage to figure out how to be okay sober. And the longer I stay sober without a solution, the closer I am to a drink. And that drives this mental obsession, which forces me to drink against my will over and over again. And I didn't understand really any of that when I got here. You know, I say that I understood the first half of the first step. But I certainly didn't understand it in the way that I just articulated it. You know, I understood I drink alcohol, bad stuff happens, I lose control. You know, that was what, I didn't know, that it was going to happen, that I had no ability to determine when I was going to have this allergic reaction and when I wasn't, and that for me it's most of the time, you know. But I certainly knew, you know, from a pretty young age that there was something physically going on, that there was no way for me to drink alcohol safely. Because what that looked like, you know, is like age 12, the first time that I ever drank. We went to my friend's house. Their parents were out of town. We stole a fifth of liquor from their liquor cabinet. 4 12-year-olds split a fifth of liquor. That bottle was empty. The other 3 12-year-old girls were, you know, feeling good, or maybe beyond good at that point, and were satisfied to invite some people over and goof around. And all I could think about was the liquor cabinet that had all of the rest of the bottles. And I went back and I got another bottle, and I drank until I passed out and blacked out, and I woke up the next morning on the bathroom floor. And that's, you know, that's what it looked like time 1 that I put alcohol in my system. You know, some people develop this phenomenon of craving gradually. They, you know, grow into the real alcoholic. For me, that's not what it looked like. I had no control from the first time that I drank. And, you know, that grew into some pretty scary stuff later on. You know, it's like what that looked like at the end for me one night was literally taping my own eyelids open. Which I thought was a genius idea. If none of you have ever tried it and you feel like going out and getting messed up again, try it. You can get to a whole nother level. Because what happened is, it's like, I always kind of like, I don't relate when people are like, oh, I only stopped when I, got locked up or ran out of alcohol. Like, I don't stop when I run out of alcohol. And I know that liquor laws are different in different places, but in California, liquor is only not sold between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. So you've got a pretty short window a 5-hour window where liquor is not sold. But they sell liquor in grocery stores. And grocery stores are open 24 hours. And you can't buy the liquor during those hours, but the aisles are still open. You just can't go get rung up for the liquor. So as long as you're willing to steal, and as long as you're willing to drive drunk, running out of alcohol is not an impediment to continuing to drink. And I am 100% willing, when I already have alcohol in my system, to do both of those things. There is nothing getting between me and the next drink. And once I was running out and I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore, and I literally taped my own eyelids open, and it was a kind of a process because you have to, in order to tape your eyelids open, you don't want to rip your eyebrows off, and so you have to put Band-Aids over your eyebrows, like the non-sticky part over your eyebrows, so that you don't pull your eyebrows off. And then once you have that there, you can get some duct tape and you get from the top of your eyelids up to your forehead. So then your eyes are stuck like that, so the whole nodding out, your head might still be going, but your eyes aren't going to close. And then, once you're like that, then you find a beanie and pull it over, because once the beanie is there, the police officer is not going to know that your eyelids are taped open. And then, just for extra protection, I'm not sure where this thought came in, less conspicuous to have two hats on than one. Then you get a baseball cap and put it on over the beanie, and then you're ready to go. And I was ready to go, and I got behind the wheel and drove like that so that I could go get some more, And thankfully I wasn't pulled over. Thankfully I didn't kill anyone. And thankfully I didn't continue to engage in that practice after that time, although I'm not really sure why I didn't, because at that time in my life I thought it was a great idea. And so that was clear to me. Something abnormal happens to me when I put alcohol in my system. Because I watch my mother drink, and my mother orders one margarita, and she drinks that one margarita, and she drinks it kind of quickly. She's clearly enjoying it. But then it's empty, and then she pours water into the ice cubes and swirls it around and drinks the margarita flavored ice or water, and then she sometimes even does it again and does it and says how good it was and lets the ice melt. My mom's here tonight, so I'm making a little bit of fun of her, but it's true. And then I've never seen her say, I'm going to have one margarita tonight and then order a second. But she's clearly enjoying that margarita. It's clear to me what I have said, I'm going to have one drink, and that one drink is not what happens. So I get here, and it's that much is clear. But what I do not understand at all, and what I have to come to experience, is that I have no power over alcohol sober. That I have no power to make a decision to stop drinking and then follow that up with not drinking. Sure, I can quit for a period of time. I've done it for months. I've done it over a year, twice. But I cannot actually stop on my own power. Because I get so restless, irritable, and discontented sober that I turn back to the thing that provides me relief over and over and over again. Even when I know it's going to be terrible, even when I know I'm not going to have any control over it, even when I know I'm going to hurt the people around me. It's not that I don't remember that stuff. Sometimes I don't, It's sometimes I don't at all. Other times I'm fully aware of, this is going to be bad. but I don't have the power to not do it. And I don't really know why I thought that my life was going to get better if I just stopped drinking. Because looking back at my life experience now, I wasn't really okay before I ever picked up a drink. And so to think that putting down the alcohol is going to be the solution didn't really make any sense. But I had to actually experience that not working over and over again. But, you know, what it looked like for me, like before that first time that I drank when I was 12 years old, is everything looked pretty okay on the outside. You know, I actually have like a pretty charmed, blessed life. You know, I was born to affluent parents that provided everything for me, that loved me unconditionally. They've loved me through all of the torture that I've put them through. They loved me before that. They loved me after that. I was always pretty able to make friends. I was pretty intelligent, not in the life decisions that I made, but like in terms of like, you know, standardized test scores. Like I was pretty intelligent. I was able to get into good schools. I was able to get good grades. I was a decent athlete. And so, you know, on the outside, it looked okay. But before I took that first drink, what was going on inside was not okay from a very young age. You know, it's like when my mother tried to drop me off at preschool, kindergarten, ski camp, I would cry and hold on to her leg and beg her not to leave me with these strangers, because what are they going to think of me? How am I going to interact with these people? This is terrifying, you know? And I am like so loved by my parents, but I remember we would go on road trips in the summer, and I remember thinking when my parents would ask me to go to the bathroom, you know, when we'd go to a rest stop, when we'd be on this road trip, once I was old enough for them to be like, you need to go to the bathroom, I was convinced that if I went to the bathroom by myself, I was going to come out and my parents would be gone, that they were trying to get rid of me. That never once happened. I had no reason to think that, but that, you know, it's like this is how my perception of life is. It doesn't matter. It's completely disjointed from reality. I'm convinced that all of my friends are friends with me out of pity for me, that the second that I go to the bathroom or leave the room, they're talking about how annoying it is to have me around. They're like, she smells weird, or she looks weird, or she doesn't know how to dress, or did you see that pimple on her forehead, and she's so annoying, and why do our moms make us include her? You know, it was like did not feel okay. I did not feel like I fit anywhere. And I used to say, like I used to when I was earlier in sobriety, when I would tell my story, I used to say I didn't fit anywhere. But I've come to see that that's not really the truth. It's like I think other people thought I fit. It's just in my own mind I didn't fit. And that's like this illness of alcoholism. It's like what's going on inside my mind. My perception of reality is so far removed from reality. And when I took that first drink, I got relief from myself, from my own mind. I was finally like able to just tell a joke without overanalyzing and running the joke back and forth through my own mind for so long that I missed the opportunity to tell the joke by the time that I decided that the joke was funny enough to tell. You know, it was like I was able to just tell the joke. I was able to just laugh at myself. I felt pretty enough. I felt smart enough. I felt like you guys were lucky to have me around. And so if alcohol does that for me, I don't know how I think I'm ever going to stay sober if I don't find something that does that for me here. You know, the big book talks about, in the doctor's opinion, it talks about how we're restless, irritable, and discontented. And unless we can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of our recovery. I didn't know that that was what was available here. I didn't know that what we're talking about with a spiritual experience is an entire psychic change. That I can have a complete personality change. It's talked about in so many different ways in this book. It's like I have a complete rearrangement, in my ways of thinking and viewing the world. And it's like, of course that's what I need. Of course I need something so much more than sobriety. Because if alcohol does that for me, and I am as uncomfortable as I am sober, I am going to go back to the thing that provides me relief from sobriety every single time, unless I find something else that can provide me freedom, not just some temporary relief, but some freedom. And that's what I've found here, but it came from a lot of pain. It came from a lot of failing to do things, failing to get the results that I wanted when trying to do things my way. Because I got here and I didn't want to work the 12 steps. I thought that all of you that were working the 12 steps wanted to work them. And I didn't want to work them, so, I wasn't going to work them. Because I had never in my life really done anything that I hadn't wanted to do, ever. And I assumed that that's how everybody else was operating. I will report, I still do not want to do the 12 steps. Occasionally there's parts of it that I enjoy and want to do, but most days I do not want to pray in the morning. Most days I do not want to take inventory at night before I go to bed. Most days I hope a lot of my sponsees cancel. Most days I get really frustrated when my sponsor tells me to write some more inventory. I have resistance to picking up the phone every time I'm resentful and afraid and I need to do a 10-step. That is my experience, and I'm going to tell you the truth of it. It's like working with others is the bright spot of my life. It is more rewarding than anything, and still, I am so selfish. I have so little power to alter my own mind that I still, every single time, I hope she doesn't call. I hope she can't meet today. Every single time. I don't want to go to this meeting. I really just want to stay home and watch Netflix. I still want to do the thing that I never feel as good doing, that I never feel as connected doing, that I'm not as useful doing. That is still what my alcoholic mind wants to do. Because what is available here, the book talks about being recovered. And I do identify as being recovered. But what do I mean by that? I mean I've recovered from this seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. The state that I just talked about, where I have this mind that takes me back to the first drink from a sober state over and over and over again. And once I take that first one, I have no ability to control when I'm going to stop. And I'm stuck in this trap that is eventually going to lead me to death. This seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, I've recovered from that. I have been restored to sanity as far as alcohol is concerned. I no longer battle a desire to drink on a daily basis. That's not something, it's something I occasionally have a fleeting thought when I see a drink at a restaurant, but like, oh, that looks nice, and as soon as it comes, it's gone. It's like, whereas before having a spiritual awakening, before working these steps, it was like I was here for 5 months, a year and a half, thinking about how much I wanted to drink every single second, or thinking about how much I couldn't drink every single second and how much I was going to stay sober. But, it was like I was waking up in the morning trying not to drink. It was like that was my whole existence. And I've recovered from that. But I have not been cured of alcoholism. It's like all of the things that drive this mind that ends up needing a drink. I still suffer from all of that. I still have selfishness going on. I still have tendencies towards dishonesty. Yes, they look very different today. When I got here, I was a cheat, and I was a thief, and I was a liar. It doesn't look like that today. I'm not cheating on my husband. I'm not lying to your face. I'm not stealing from stores. It's like that's not what's going on. But I still have tendencies towards dishonesty. I still have tendencies towards delusion, towards not seeing things as they are. I've been shown that hypocrisy is another form of dishonesty. I for sure have tendencies towards that. My default is selfish, dishonest, resentful, inconsiderate, afraid. And it's like, and it still is. The beautiful thing is that what working these steps has done for me, not what I have done, but what God has done for me as a result of being willing to do this stuff that I don't want to do, that doesn't make sense to me how it's going to work, is I've been given some space to exist separate from my mind. It's like in our 10th step. In our 10th step, it instructs us to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. That's a pretty cool thing that once we get to step 10, we're even able to do that. Because I wasn't watching for any of those things when I got here. I was those things. I was selfish. I was dishonest. I was resentful. I was afraid. And there was no thought going on. There was no consciousness of what was happening. There was no awareness. There was no me separate from my mind. My reality was made up of my thoughts, my emotions, and my physical body. And there was no, oh, that's a selfish thought. That's not really honest. Like, maybe you should pray and discuss this with someone and, maybe you don't have to act on this. Maybe you can ask God for some power. That was not going on. The action was simultaneous with the thought. And what has happened here as a result of going through this process that I don't understand at all is I've been given some freedom from my mind. I've been given a way to live that I'm not so restless, irritable, and discontented sober. Because that's, the only thing, if my problem was just the alcohol, all I would have to do is stop drinking. But my problem is the sobriety. And these steps have treated my sobriety. At the end of the last time that I was forced to get unsober by the pain of sobriety, I had 18 months sober. I was a mess. It didn't look like I was sober from the outside. I was waking up at like 11 or 12. I was sleeping as much of the day away as I possibly could. When I did wake up, I was forcing myself to fall back asleep. When I did get up, I'd pick my face in the mirror till it bled and was scabbed. First it looks like I'm on Xanax, then it looks like I'm on meth. Like, you would never have known from the outside looking in that I'm sober. I'm sleeping for like 18 hours, but I'm getting up and picking my face off till it bleeds, and there's nothing even to pick in the first place. Then I'm getting in the shower, washing my face with hot water to try to fix the damage I've done, putting on makeup to try to hide the damage I've done, going into the bedroom, trying on 10 different outfits to try to find an outfit that's going to disguise how much pain I'm in. It's like if I put on the right mask and the right costume and I go out into this world, then maybe you're not going to be able to see how much pain I'm in. Maybe I'm going to be able to convince you guys that I'm okay, and maybe if I can convince you guys that I'm okay, then maybe I will be okay. And, my lofty goals for the day, because I was so selfish and inconsiderate at that time in my life that, I didn't have a job, even though I was totally able, aside from the, mental illness of alcoholism that I was suffering from, I was totally able to hold a job, but my parents were supporting me. And so if your parents are supporting you, why not let them? Even when you're in your 20s, if your parents are supporting you, why work? I didn't have a job, and my lofty goals for the day were usually something like go to the therapist, go to an AA meeting, go to the grocery store, or go to the gym. And like one of those things. I rarely ever did more than one of those things in a day because that was just too much. But one of those things was usually my goal for the day, and most days I never made it out of the house. Most days it took me hours to even get to a point that I felt like I could get out of the house, and like I was so exhausted, I was so riddled with fear, I would just give up. Try to force myself to go back to sleep. And of course, I went back to the one thing that I know provides me relief from sobriety. Of course I got unsober again. And I told on myself, I went to a meeting. I called my sponsor. But I wasn't being sponsored. I just had somebody that let me call her a sponsor. I hadn't worked the steps. I had no power flowing in my life, so none of those human powers worked to keep me sober. And I got loaded again. And I ended up in the hospital. And they told me they didn't know whether I was going to live or die. And the thing is, I died in there. The person that I was that came into that hospital died in that hospital. Thank God. Because that person would have actually physically died had I continued to live. You know, my boyfriend at the time was a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And my mother came down from Northern California, and they both kind of like intervened on me in that hospital room, and they asked me to get help. And I was willing to get help. I literally like screamed at first and was, it was not like, yeah, sure, of course, it was a painful death that I died in there. And more painful for them than me, I'm sure. But I got out of there and I went into sober living, and I started working the steps pretty quickly. And I had this beautiful God-inspired experience that's like, very unconventional and just so clear that God was orchestrating the whole thing. This woman offered me sponsorship, and like she did the best she could, but she's no longer sober. I don't think she'd ever sponsored anyone before. I don't know if she sponsored anyone since. But at the same time that I was working with her, I was plopped into this big book workshop where they went through the book line by line, and we worked the steps in this workshop. And now I'm like looking back, it's like I was a pretty arrogant little newcomer, but like I had no idea. I just like was so desperate to get better, and I believed that these people in this workshop were better. Like I knew that like they were talking about the pain that they experienced before they got sober in a way that I knew that like they were the same as me, and they had this light about them that I knew that there was something different. And so we were going through the book, and he was talking about how we were supposed to write inventory, and I was having this experience in this workshop, and then I'd come back to my sponsor and I'd be like, what you're telling me to do is not what the book says. Like, can I write inventory the way that the big book, like I just really want to do what the big book says, because people keep saying it's really important to do what the big book says, and like, can I do it this way? And she's like, sure, whatever. Like, whatever. And so like I wrote inventory the way that he told us to do it in the workshop. And she listened to it, and then she was like, can I take some pictures of that? Like, that seems like a better way to do that. And I was like, sure. And it worked really well until it didn't. It's like I had this experience in this workshop, and then it worked and I was doing the steps in the workshop, following his instructions, but being honest with my sponsor of like, I want to do it this way, and she was letting me do it, and then I got to amends. And that's a tricky thing to do without the guidance of the sponsor to do. It's like I made my 8-step list, and I'm a thief. I stole from a lot of places. I was more of like I stole, other than like my mother and father, like I took money from their like purses and wallets here and there. Like I stole from like Nordstrom and CVS and J. Crew and like the places I didn't need to steal from. I just stole. It was another thing that provided me some relief. So I tell her about all these amends, and she tells me, oh, well, the way that you're going to make these amends is you're not going to steal anymore. And it's like, that was not lining up with the instruction that we were getting in the workshop. That was not lining up with what we were studying in the big book. That was not lining up. But it was great. I was like, wonderful. That sounds a lot easier than what I've had to do, which is talk to the Nordstrom head of loss prevention in the village at Corte Madera and tell him that I've calculated that the amount of merchandise that I've stolen from them is $31,000 worth of stuff, and can I pay this back $50 a month until, for the next 10 lifetimes, because that's what I can afford to pay right now, and hopefully at some point in the future I can pay more. Hilarious, these places that he will not call me back. He's talked to me, he's like, I'll try to figure out how you can send that money. I'm called him multiple times. He just doesn't, we played phone tag a couple times, but now he's not getting back to me. I'm just but J. Crew I have a number if anyone needs it, actually. Kim Tawsey is the head of loss prevention at J. Crew, and I also have a couple sponsees that also stole from J. Crew, so Kim is great. She will listen. She doesn't want to meet in person, but she will listen to your amends on the phone. She'll get up and close the office door, and she will give you the address to send your checks to. So, and so obviously I've had a different experience in amends since that first time through, because that first time through, it was I knew internally that was not making it right. I knew that not stealing anymore was not repairing, that Nordstrom didn't care that I was no longer stealing from Nordstrom. They wanted to know, literally when I called this guy, I had my whole thing written out, but one thing I hadn't looked at was the years that I did it. And he's been the loss prevention manager at the store that I stole from, during the time that I stole, and still is. And so he was like, what years do you think this was? And I was like, I don't know. I said 2010 to 2013. I just guessed that it was the last 3 years before I got sober. And he was like, is it possible that it was 2008 to 2013? And I was like, yeah, for sure, because that's right after I graduated from high school, and that's exactly what it would have been. And he was like, okay, well, that makes sense, because we had a big uptick in theft at this store during that time, and so obviously he was very happy to have the conversation with me. He was very happy to know. He was very happy for me to make the amends to him, to acknowledge that I had threatened his job and caused him harm. He almost lost his job because of that uptick in crime. That was me. So he doesn't care that I'm no longer stealing from Nordstrom. And I knew on some level that was the case back then, But I wasn't going to go out and make amends without my sponsor's direction on how to do it. And, so from that point, it started this strange journey of trying to get somebody that would give me the direction on how to make these amends that I knew I needed to make. And I asked another woman to sponsor me, and we ended up not rewinding, but starting over at step one, and that took a really long time. And so what happened is I had this really powerful experience, but I didn't ever really do more than start my amends. I made some selfish surface level amends, to my parents, to my boyfriend, and then when my boyfriend broke up with me, to an ex-boyfriend, not for pure motive. It's I did not even begin to really scratch the surface of my amends, and I just kind of stopped there. I wasn't practicing the 10th step. I was kind of doing 11, especially when I was in pain. It was all of it was selfish. It was when I was in a lot of pain, I would pray and ask for some help. I didn't have any daily morning practice. I wasn't reviewing my day on a regular basis. And then I started working with people here and there. I would sponsor one woman at a time, usually. I'd raise my hand in meetings and say that I was, when they asked if somebody was available who was available for sponsorship, I'd raise my hand. But I wasn't seeking out women. And what happened is I got sick again. And I wasn't doing these things, and I started to coast downhill, and a couple really painful and really scary, but really beautiful things happened, which is part of my whole experience, that I have no idea what I need, and I have no idea, what the best plan for my life is. But my boyfriend, he was my boyfriend at the time, he's my husband now, he broke up with me, and I was devastated. I'd placed a lot of dependence on him over God. I wasn't as active in Alcoholics Anonymous as I had been before we were together. He had really been something that was providing relief for me. His attention, his approval was the thing that I had begun working for. And that was gone. And that was when I really began to have the experience that, began then, which was about, 3 years ago, and that I'm, still has just grown since then. Because, it was I had to get to a place that I was willing to seek God regardless of whether I had Him, that I was willing to walk away from Him, and I did. He came back after 5 weeks. And he's here too, so when I'm talking about his story, he's totally cool with me talking about it, and, our stories are interwoven. I wouldn't be where I am today in my sobriety without him. But when he came back, I had gotten to a place where I had seen that I could not be with him as he had been living his life. And I told him that, and it's God... I got to a place in that pain with God of being completely willing to walk away from the love of my life because I had to live honestly and live on the basis of principles. And so when he came back, I told him why I couldn't be with him. I didn't say, I can be with you if you do X, Y, and Z. I said, I can't be with you for X, Y, and Z reasons. I can't have this type of dishonesty in my life. I told you the FBI showed up at his parents' door, so, he was involved in healthcare fraud. And I had come to wake up to the full extent of what was going on in the time that we were apart. And I loved him enough that I wanted to tell him the truth of what was going on. And it wasn't really my plan. He asked me if he could talk to me. I said, call me back at 6. Mainly because I needed to pray and get with God before I could talk to him. And in that time, it just became really clear that I needed to tell him the truth of what I had come to see. And I was terrified. I was absolutely sure that if I told him the dishonesty that I saw in his life, that he was never going to talk to me again. But what happened when I told him that? When I told him I can't be with you because of you're doing this, this, and this, and because you're surrounding yourself with these and these people, that this cannot work. Something happened where God entered and he was cracked open and he came to see the truth of what was going on. And he woke up and walked away from everything that he was doing and started making amends for it. And, got re-engaged in the steps and started making amends to all the women that he had never made amends to because he had never had the power to show up differently for me either, and it was suggested to him that maybe he wasn't ever going to have the power in these areas of his life unless he did everything he could to clean up those areas of his life that he hadn't cleaned up. And he started doing that. And what has happened, because I have been, we've been together since that time, and we got married April 4th of 2020. What's happened is he's been completely transformed. He shows up for me in a way that I didn't know it was possible for a man to show up for a woman. He treats me with the utmost integrity and respect. And he attributes it to the amends process. And so I watch him have this experience, and I start becoming really clear on what I have not done, specifically in the amends process. He starts doing 10 steps on a daily basis. I get really clear that I wasn't doing that. He's starting taking time in the morning and reviewing his day at night, and it's what has happened over the past 3 years is it's like I was blessed with somebody that I fell in love with. Some serious pain and fear was brought into our life. The fear mainly around the FBI showing up, and he's been on federal pretrial release for 2 years now and is still facing some time in prison. But I'm really blessed that I had some pain and fear, but I didn't necessarily have to hit the same level of pain that I saw him hit. It was like, I know that I'm so similar to him, and I saw him hit that level of pain, and I saw him then do the work that was necessary to get free from that and be transformed. And I have been blessed to walk with him and have, followed his lead and gotten re-engaged in all the stuff that gotten engaged in all of those steps that I was not engaged in, have started working with people in a way that I was not working with people, and living a life that is not the life that I want to live. My life is not what I would choose it to be many days. When people said, oh, it's a life beyond my wildest dreams, I was like, that's baloney. But it's like, that's my truth today. I live a life beyond my wildest dreams. Not monetarily, not, I don't have fancy, shiny stuff, none of that external stuff. I would never have dreamed of the life that I live today. I would never have dreamed of being useful to people, of trying to help people find God. I would never have dreamed of any of that stuff. But that has been what has been given to me here. And if there's anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, that wants some of that, that's what's available here. And please, I'm not just up here to talk about it and then walk away. Please come talk to me after the meeting, and I'm willing to talk to any of you. Thanks for having me.
So after the meeting, it is customary that we do form a line right here to the right, and just to meet and introduce ourselves to the speaker and thank them for coming out, since we do appreciate the time and the fact that they do come out on their own expense as well. So once again, let's give a round of applause for Cleo. We always need help cleaning up, especially putting away the chairs. So if you would like to get involved with this meeting and group, please see us before or after the meeting. And at this time, I would like to invite all who care to join us in closing with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thy is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.